Trust loans, we building major businesses. Trust loans, we building major. This government believe in you. You own your own business. Crowd of people hear this. $5,000 in security free loans. Put your name on wait list. Trust loans, we building major businesses. Trust loans, we building major. Trust loans.
Good night to my
Good
co-host.
Hello, you're looking as beautiful as ever.
You too, in your chair lounging back. Welcoming everyone to the Barbados Trust Loan Limited Let's Talk Entrepreneurship. This is episode 3, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Miss Stephanie Chase. Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and we have some very interesting things to discuss this evening. Absolutely.
We do. Tonight's topic is Banking Woes, exploring the difficulties of banking in Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
and we have some great panelists. And also we went on the road, and we asked persons to rate banking in Barbados from 1 to 10, and those responses were very, very interesting. Just want to tell anyone that's joining now, you can watch this on YouTube, Trust Loans Barbados, Instagram, Barbados Trust Fund Limited or Trust Fund Ltd, or on Facebook at Trust Loans Barbados. This is an hour-long show. We went over for the first 2 episodes because the conversations were so good. But we're going to try to keep in time, but it will still be as sweet as possible.
Absolutely. So, Tony, you want to introduce the panelists for this evening?
Sure. We have Mr. Ray Jackman, Managing Director of Biracha Consulting, Inc. We also have Mr. Adrian Waithe, Barbados Loans Manager of a leading financial institution. We also have financial literacy for entrepreneurship expert and a former banker at Citibank. And she's also a financial coach. Her name is Marcia Armstrong.
So
welcome,
we do have
panelists.
Experienced panelists who are going to be joining us. And I do believe that we BTFL entrepreneur Nicholas, who will be joining us later in the show as well.
Yes. So I'll start off the first question, and I will ask our panelists, how would you rate banking in Barbados out of 1 to 10? And be as objective as possible. Not everybody at the same time. Adrian, you want to start?
I would say it's an 8 out of 10. This is an exciting time to be in banking, so yeah, I would give it 8 out of 10 right now.
Why is it an exciting time to be in banking in Barbados right now?
You've now moved to a stage where everything is digital. I mean, from the comfort of your home, from overseas, wherever you can access banking, you can take out a loan. There's name it, you can do it via banking, and it's all from the comfort of your mobile device, laptop, tablet, whatever the case may be. Like before, you needed to would have to do those long queues. It's all in your hand. I mean, banking is now exciting. You can do everything online.
So then it's based on the integration of technology into the banking industry, as opposed to the services and the customer service being offered to your customers. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, go again.
So I was asking you if your so high rating of 8 is heavily influenced by the integration of technology into the banking services industry, because you focused a lot of the online banking and taking away of the length of time that you would have to wait, having to go into the physical banking institution to conduct business. So the ease of doing business is
because
go ahead.
Yes, and then what's to come as well. So it's ease of doing banking. I mean, there are still some long lines, but before, you would have to for example, join a long Friday to do X, Y, Z, whatever the case may be. Even to pay a bill, to open an account, it's all at your fingertips. You press of a button.
But
I think
Adrian,
that's
I want
something
to
to be
ask you a
excited about.
question. I want to ask you a question. How long does it take to open a bank account in Barbados online? Because I just let me ask that. How long does it take to open a bank
A
account
personal
online?
account could take a personal account could take maybe 15 minutes, depending, because rightfully so, customers need to provide all the relevant information. And once that's done, it could be done within 15 minutes, half hour or so.
So you are saying that there are facilities to upload this information digitally into your online portal to create that saving checking account, or maybe that account, depending on the type of business that
that's right.
you.
And what about a business? The same 15 minutes. The same 15 minutes.
Business could take that's the personal. A business could take a bit longer. There's a bit more to be done. But again, the convenience of being able to review those forms, and then if your relationship manager can easily pop in and we can go through a few things, and that takes really time. I mean, long gone are the days where you would have to wait weeks for a business account. That could be done in a few days because there's a bit more to be done for business accounts.
Okay. I will circle back on that. What about you, Mr. Chapman?
The 15 minutes. I haven't yet come improvements in terms of the technology, in terms of online banking and so on. I haven't as yet. Certainly, you can upload on maybe in terms of filling up what's required for KYC and those kind of value doesn't speak to 15 minutes at all. And then in some I've known of situations that took a good, and it wasn't a case where there was an absence of information and so on. So, the experience I would think some banks are much better than others. So maybe some you can do this a lot quicker, but then some banks that it take a good while. And it can take a good month sometimes to be able to get just the account started. So experience will vary. Maybe you can say that they're getting better because there is online banking, and you can do a lot more online banking. But I wouldn't rate the banking experience to be an 8. I think 8 is superlative, but that's an A+. I wouldn't get up there at this stage. Maybe a 6, maybe a 6.5.
So we have 8. We have 8
6.5
because of digital transformation, and a 6.5. What about Miss Marcia Armstrong?
I would actually rate it around 7. And the reasoning behind that is that although banks, yes, have digitized what they have been doing, there are many people who have accounts that don't even understand the benefits of the account. So I believe that a gap still exists there in regards to people understanding, okay, when I open this account, what are the pros and the cons of having a particular account? I believe that information is kind of lacking. And because if you don't know the full capacity or potential of a bank account, you will not execute it the way it should be executed. So yes, we have some banks that are online, but there are still some banks in Barbados that are still doing it manual as well. So that is not across the board. So I would give it a good solid 7. The customer perspective, a lot more can be done in regards to based on their needs, especially businesses, based on the business needs for the account. I believe a lot can be done in regards to selecting the right account for that individual or entity, as well as explaining, okay, these are the benefits that you can derive from having a particular account. So I would give it a 7.
Can you give us an example of something like that? Like what's not being done from a financial literacy perspective by the banks that they could possibly do?
So I know that for some banks as well, that you can go on their website, you're able to pull down information in regards to the different accounts that they have set up to know, okay, with this type of account, you can expect X amount of fees to be paid every month, because you have to know at least what it's going to cost you. So yes, you are being told what the service charges will be, what the maintenance charges are, how you can save if there are, if you have a foreign account, if you can use that. But I believe that the banks need to provide information, especially to entrepreneurs, in regards to how that they can work collectively together. Because if we are being very honest, sometimes when you go to the bank and you get a process done, it takes the amount of information that is asked from you. Some people are not prepared. Some people are actually not prepared, but based on the questions that they're being asked on the internal banking forms. So if it's a particular scenario, whereas that banks can conduct some clinics or some educational forums in regards to helping entrepreneurs understand what are the requirements that they have to come with, it will cut down the length of time that it would take to open an account. Also, it will allow people to have more trust in the banking system, because let's be honest, some people are not fully trustworthy of it, and they're looking for other means to be able to, hold their money or to make money on their money, because we understand as well too that the interest rates are not attractive either, right? Keeping it all the way real. So I believe that the banks, what the banks can do, especially for the entrepreneurs or even sole traders in particular, is to just explain the products a bit more, so that when persons make a decision, it's not just to open an account for opening an account sake to say you have money saving, but you understand, okay, these are the benefits that I can get from opening account type A versus account type B, so that that person is able to really fully utilize the platform that is being afforded to them.
Well, we are going to thank you so much, Ms. Armstrong. My co-host and I, we are going to go to Man on the Street to hear what the man on the street had to say.
And we're back. The man is on the street. I am Akhenaten Burrows. Today we're talking all about financials when it comes to banking, when it comes to financial issues that you face as a small business in Barbados. And we're going to take it to the business owners to find out what are the struggles, what they would like to see improve. Stay tuned. Follow me. Kumar, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate banking in Barbados?
I'd give it a 4, minus 50.
I would say 5.
Personally, I would say a 7. Business-wise, a 1.5.
They require way too much information just to open up a business account. The merchant fees are way too high.
I mean, it's crazy. I can write a job letter for one of my staff, and my same business, small business that pays them, they can go into a financial institution and get hire purchase, get a loan. I have to show 6 months bank statements, financial statements and stuff like that from the same business to be able to get any sort of funding or lending. So I find that the layers that are required for you as a business owner versus the employee working at the same small business, they're not parallel.
The unwillingness to work with small business people is probably the main one in my opinion.
Bad service, I have to say, in Barbados is a cultural thing. I mean, not only in banking, people believe that they're generally, not everyone, they believe that they're doing a job to serve you properly. And the idea of saying good morning, good afternoon, thank you very much is almost null and void in Barbados. I mean, quite frankly, there seems to be a different approach to tourists because we understand that these people are the oxygen of our survival. But most Barbadians will say to you, including those that are the perpetrators of bad service, the service in Barbados is terrible, quite frankly.
So what would you recommend that they do to make it more manageable, especially for small business, as a small business owner yourself?
I mean, obviously lending to a small business is considered a risk. But I think that there needs to be some merit paid to the longevity of the business. I don't think you can call all small businesses at the same level. Like I said, I've been in small business and a business owner since 2005, which would suggest that the business has some longevity. So to then be held at the same standard of a high risk, 17, 18 years in, I just think that there needs to be kind of probably of a sliding scale So it's not just that you're a small business and everybody's treated equally. I think that the fact that you have operated a business for an established business for a while, the length of tenure that you've had for your employees would suggest, I'm not turning over employees. I have employees that have been with me for 16 and 17 years. Wow. So it means that, you established yourself as a player and somebody who can stay in the market. So I think that should count for something.
By being more acceptive, being more responsive, being more interested in them. When they have their concerns, dealing with it. When they have their queries or their request, dealing with it. But they just don't seem to be interested.
There you have it, guys. Another episode of Man on the Street. Tune in next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Let's talk entrepreneurship. And if you want to join me live, come on down to Jacqueline's Variety. See you then.
That watch party with Atkinson. In true Atkinson form, we're going to go to the live watch party to see what's the vibe and the energy there. We're having some technical difficulties.
Seems that we lost his audio. But we won't let that deter us. Let's get into the conversation once again, Tony, because we would have had a precursor. Panelists would have made, the financial institutions right in Barbados. I think I have to, each of them made valid points, but for me, when I think about rating the financial institutions in Barbados, I have to take into consideration the credit versus the regular banks. And then I also have to think about the role that the Central Bank of Barbados plays in regulating the financial institutions in Barbados. Because I think that a lot of people are, as Strong alluded to, are unaware of the protocols and the policies and the very vital role in for the line for that better offer along with small businesses and those who have who make additional capital to but goes to these ad hoc policies. This will see.
Stephanie, I think I was getting some technical difficulties from you on my end. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
A little better.
It's a little better now.
I heard you speak about the role of the central bank in Barbados. After that,
yes, and right how for operation of what policy along with offering to owners, small entrepreneurs or corporations.
So you're still breaking up, but what I'm gathering is you're saying, and I'm probably not going to get everything that you're trying to convey, right? But you were talking about, the role of the central bank and how what role they play in terms of the small entrepreneurs, not only the commercial banks. Am I correct?
And credit union. Yes.
And credit union. Okay.
Yes.
Can we get the thoughts of our panelists? I'm going to start. I know that we ended with Miss Armstrong. We're going to start with her.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? The question was the role of
the central bank and credit union versus commercial banks in Barbados.
the role of the central bank with credit union. Sorry.
The role of
You're breaking up, Stephanie.
Oh my goodness. All right.
But these things happen. These things happen. You look beautiful on camera, so that's half the battle. And I will continue with the panelists in the meantime, whilst my co-host addresses the technical difficulties. Yes, Ms. Marcia, what's the role of the central bank and particularly credit unions in Barbados? And there are some people that believe that, you know, the credit unions, it's better to put your money in the credit unions versus banks. Is that ignorant? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't believe it's ignorant, to be honest with you. I find that the interest rates in particular might be a bit more attractive. You know, ideally people do put money on their account because they want to be able to, you know, let their money make money, right? The credit unions might not necessarily have the same strict policies or strict guidelines as they relate, you know, when compared to banks, right? But you will find a lot of people say, you know what, put your money in the credit union because, for instance, if you are going for a loan in particular, right, you will find out at the credit union, they might have something in place whereas that while you pay back a loan, you can also save money too, right?
Yeah.
So that at the end of that loan payment, you still have something there to be able to fall back on. And also in some, pardon?
I was just mentioning dividends. Sorry to cross you. Go ahead.
No problem, right? So you know they still have something to look back on. And what I will say as well too is that, you know, someone would have mentioned, I guess, one of the speakers on the street, you know, that were interviewed. It is basically how you are received, right? How are you received? And I find that in some credit unions, they work with you, right? They actually work with you, you know, to see where you're at, see where your goals are, and help you along that path. I find that for some persons in the banking industry, it might be a situation whereas it feels that it is more pushed back. And anything that causes that a level of pushback, of course, can, you know, can discourage someone from moving forward. But what I'll say is that, you know, there are certain guidelines. As I said, I know that the banking industry in particular had mentioned that the same policies or the same regulations that they're being upheld to, that the credit union, because they also do deposit intake, they should also be facing some of the similar, you know, to still be operating by the same rules. So there's not a situation where one person operates one way and the credit union operates another way, right? I believe altogether, if it is a situation where, as again, that a relationship can be forged with those that are entrepreneurs in Barbados, whereas that they feel welcome and they are worked with, I believe that more relationships and more, you know, more trust in the financial industry will come forth, because it will not seem like if they're only being something being taken from them, but they will see an institution wanting to work alongside of them to be able to reach their operational goals or business goals altogether. You know, so that is my intake in regards to just the way in which, again, people are welcome, just the way persons are given information to work with, that they feel that they are part of the process, and it's not a separation in that you just come for a product or a service and that's it, and you're on your own, right? They look at you from a holistic point of view, so that when you're done with that, the relationship that is built, then through that one person, you can have multiple business coming from one entity or individual, because again, they feel welcome, right? They feel welcome. So again, I have persons that work in the credit union, I have persons that work in the bank, right? But again, the credit union will get the nod because of the fact that they actually work alongside people and actually work with where they're at and help them to get to where they want to go.
I'm looking at Adrian's facial expressions and and Yeah, I think I want to go to him next to address it.
I mean, each financial institution has a role to play. I've heard before the comment about customer service, and yes, there's good customer service, there's bad customer service, but to me, customer service is an attitude. You'll get it good some places, and unfortunately, other places you do it. But what I want to say is that, I mean, there's a lot out there, and I would encourage people to educate themselves. I mean, there are websites you can log on to. Each bank has its own website. You can go and see what's what. But then, the discussion phase, we need to, if need be, I mean, have that discussion with one of the banking reps. And yes, we're all reachable. Don't tell me you can't reach us. And let's try to talk you through the process, because I find way too often people come and they have probably an impression about what banking is, and things just go crazy from there. But there's a lot out there. There's a lot to offer, a whole lot more than we can even, I guess, chat about here tonight. But again, I would encourage you to educate yourself, ask these questions, any questions, all questions, no questions about questions, and let's change our outlook, because again, financial institutions are there to help the small business. I mean, I work primarily with small business people, and I'm willing to help. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions. Again, I don't think we'll be able to discuss all of them here, but each financial institution plays its part. I mean, you might get through better here, so you may think, but is that agreement what you really want? There's a lot to it. So I think we need to forward more discussions, have a bit more conversations, and then I believe gradually the outlook would improve.
You mentioned a really interesting word. You spoke about educating and education, and I know Michael Host is an educator. Don't you think that we should start teaching financial education a lot earlier? And if so, is a general question. I will probably start with Stephanie. When should we start teaching children about money and how money works and the banking system and investing and saving, these kinds of things? Stephanie? I am going to move on to Adrian to address that, but I really want to hear Stephanie's. I think you might have your mic on mute. Adrian, while Stephanie's doing that, from your observation, when should we teach? From the amount of questions that you get when persons come in to the bank, when do you think we should start teaching persons about financial education?
From as early as possible. My youngest son, he's 5, and I try to show him and teach him certain things, but from early as possible. If we can start with something, I guess, in the primary level, and from the moment we get to the secondary, we can upgrade, but from as early as possible, and it needs to be continuous, It's something that I think is lacking. It has been lacking for far too long, and we just definitely need to address it. The time is long gone, but from as early as possible.
What about you, Mr. Ray Chapman? What do you think about financial education for children, for people? What more could you see being done? Not hearing you either, sir. Mr. Chapman, we're not hearing you.
I was muted, sorry. No, what I was going to say is that, can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Right. Financial literacy, essential in building as an essential part of the ecosystem, so that we could have a better experience. Yeah. And without that, I guess the earlier it starts, the better. And children can learn these things from very early. And then, maybe it should be mandatory for persons to do courses in terms of basic accounts and understanding from early years. Certainly, when they reach secondary, it should be mandatory that everyone does some element of basic accounting and understanding the kind of buzzwords that are there and what they mean. And there used to be a column by Louis Fairsafe in the Nation that was always very formative in terms of teaching this. So financial literacy, especially for SMEs, is really essential, and it's a critical part of that ecosystem that needs to be put in place. Before, and just coming off of that, back to some questions from earlier, I think the challenge that we have in Barbados and the Caribbean, because it's a Caribbean issue, is that there's burdensome regulatory framework with respect to matters like knowing your customer and so on. And it's how banks in particular have interpreted these regulations and requirements and obligations with respect to customer service and customer due diligence and so on that is creating a problem. So what is happening is that you get the sense, and I'm not a banker, but you get this not customize their assessment, their risk-based assessment to meet the Caribbean requirements. And it is been documented. If you go to studies like that of on the Department of International Development, in a study that they commissioned to fintech solutions and so on, they indicated as one of their findings that the Caribbean has some of the most burdensome regulatory requirements with respect to know your customer and those issues. So, and that is where it starts. So you find a lot of small business persons want to open a bank, but the requirements are so much. And part of the literacy as well is that they don't necessarily take the time playing why they need all these things. And as I said, because assessments are not, the risk assessment is not customized for our needs and so on. That's why that lady could say what she said. She could do a job letter, and her staff could take it to an institution, and they can get loans and they can get funds. She has to wait. She has to provide 6 months bank statement, and she's been operating 18 years. It's kind of ridiculous, and that has to do with the tight regulations and so on that are in place. With respect first to EK, well, know your customer, and maybe there are things that drive that, like maybe the requirements of correspondent banks. There's certainly that aversion with commercial banks to risk and so on in Barbados. I think that's where the problem is. I seem to recall one time having a conversation with a very experienced banker with many years, and he was pretty much at the top of this. And he to a client, and he explained something. We bankers don't necessarily need to know, or necessarily understand fully your project, feasibilities and so on, profitability and so on. You may think it's the best project in the world, and maybe it's the best project in the world. He's looking at is what are the risks, and you're just at different size, same house, and it's either for the entrepreneur to come around and meet all the requirements to be able to be on the same side as the banker, or the banker to go, come around, but they have to fill that. They have to kind of fill that gap. But that gap comes. There are two different. The focus is different for both of them. The entrepreneur's business and the profitability of it and how feasible it is, and he's thinking it's a great thing, and maybe it is. But the banker is first saying, what are the risks? What are the risks?
I want to welcome.
Hello? Yeah, so I just want to go back to that in terms of what the experience by the man on the ground, because they kept it very real. But definitely an important part of improving the experience is improving the ecosystem, and part of that means that you have to decrease the level of distrust that the ordinary man in the street has, and that can only be done through improving his understanding and his knowledge of finance and financial literacy and so on. The earlier you can start, the better.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackman. I want to welcome Mr. David Simpson. He's the chairman of the board of directors at Fund Access. Welcome, Mr. Simpson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for joining us. We were talking about financial literacy, and in your position, you have a prominent position. What do you think about financial literacy and how we educate persons all across the landscape of Barbados on financial issues? Do we have a lot of work to do? Have we done a good job? Then should we start this education? What are some of the issues that you see in your capacity? I know it's a lot of questions. We don't have a lot of time, but we are very interested in hearing your perspective.
Thanks, Tony. I'll start with the financial literacy first. I agree there is still a lot to do, but I would quickly make a plug for the government's program, which I'm involved in under the auspices of the Financial Literacy Bureau. And we've been doing and in the process of expanding what we do to bring more financial literacy to the landscape. You asked the question earlier while I was waiting in terms of how early we should start. Reception, nursery school is the time when we should start. The program that the Financial Literacy Bureau has in place is meant to go into the schools, but I must confess that the interruption of COVID and the transition of students to homeschooling and having to adapt to that new interface and so on has set that back a bit. But we will be going into the schools, both primary and secondary and even tertiary. So far, we've been doing work with our webinars and other interactions with businesses, communities, community groups, and other civil groups. And there's still a lot more to be done. I'm working in the ministry very hard to roll out all the other aspects of that program. So financial literacy is critical. We have seen, even in my role at Fund Access, a lot of businesses coming forward for funding, but they are not as financially literate as they should be to even understand acquiring a loan, to even understand the critical information that they need to be on top of to manage their businesses better. You made a point earlier, there was a question about the KYC rules. And you know, my view on these KYC rules is quite radical and different to most. My position is that these KYC rules have been imposed on us by jurisdictions outside of the Caribbean and by institutions outside of the Caribbean to protect their own interests overseas. I think that's the long and short of it, in my opinion. If any of us goes to the US or any other jurisdiction to try and open an account now, you are not going to be asked for 10% of the information that we are asked to produce locally. And I can tell you this from personal experience. I know my view, I'm sure, will be controversial, but remember, these overseas jurisdictions are trying to stop their citizens from opening accounts in other jurisdictions to hide funds and hide money and hide potential tax revenues and so on. And they're also supposedly trying to trap money launderers and terrorism funding and so on. The harsh reality is the powers that be and the relevant authorities know exactly who the people are who are laundering money or who are involved in terrorism without having to put you through filling out 10 pages and indicating who your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother are in order to open the account. It is onerous at best, but we have to understand that the commercial banks have to follow the rules and the guidelines that are set. They have little option. I noticed last week that Sagicor Insurance was actually offering a prize to its policyholders to complete the KYC and update their information because it is onerous, it is tedious, it is a bother to most clients, but it is an unnecessary thing that in any other jurisdiction internationally does not obtain to the same extent. You can essentially open bank accounts and apply for credit cards and so on overseas in North America, Europe, with 2 pieces of ID. No need to know where you live, no need to have all the other things, all the other trappings that we are subjected to here. In terms of the role of the commercial banking sector, I think our commercial banks do the best they can. There are areas where they rightfully can be criticized. And I think Adrian mentioned service earlier and some other things. But I think the crux of the matter is for us as entrepreneurs and startups and small businesses, the commercial banking sector is not the ideal place for providing funding and a lot of the type of banking services that small entrepreneurs and startups and micro, small, and medium-sized entities need. The risk profile is outside commercial banks subscribe to, and the type of attention, the type of products that most of us as entrepreneurs, especially at the early stages of our businesses require, the commercial banks are not set up to provide those services. And that's where the role of alternative approaches to banking and funding and so on come in. So I know the banks will always get a hard time, and there are times when I give them a hard time within reason. But I think we have to address the issue that many of our enterprises are being pushed towards the commercial banking sector when they are not really ready to meet the criteria that the commercial banks have to meet. Remember, these banks have to manage their risk, they have to provide returns for their investors, they have to provide dividends and so on. And taking what is deemed, we have to accept that our sector is deemed to be riddled with undue risk. And so the banks will have a very cautious approach to how they invest and how they fund and deal with businesses, entrepreneurs, and micro, small, and medium-sized entities.
You spoke about investing. Why is it so hard for Barbadians to invest on, let's say, the stock exchange, the international stock market?
I'll start with the point you made earlier, which is the need for more education. But I think Barbadians are traditionally risk averse. And again, don't want to change the direction of your discussion, but that question about investment and being risk averse by nature is what has lent itself so significantly to Trinidadians and others investing and purchasing companies and so on in our country. We are the type of people that would put money on a savings account at the bank or credit union, and whatever is the interest that they're paying is what we would accept. We are not the type of people that would invest in an income growth fund at Sagicor, or a Caribbean growth fund or property fund at Fortress, or whoever the other investment vehicles are, much less buying money in shares. So I think in that regard, and I've said this to the government as well in terms of the initiative relating to the junior stock exchange, there is immense education that has to be undertaken in order for us to become more investment savvy as a people. And we need to understand that there's a distinct difference between saving and investing. Saving is putting money aside for a rainy day in case you have a medical emergency or something like that. But investing is where you are putting money into an instrument to give you a return over the medium to long term and to grow your money. Savings don't grow your money, and that's why there's been an outcry about the less than 1% interest rate at the banks. But the bank is not the place to grow your money. The bank is the place to provide a savings account, park your money for a rainy day or for emergencies. But if you really want to grow your money, create wealth, you have to invest in equities, in the stock market, in some of the mutual funds and growth funds and other instruments that Sagicor, the insurance companies, Fortress, fund managers, and so on, they have on offer.
Excellent point. Thank you so much. I will now go to Miss Marcia Armstrong. Marcia, you are the expert in financial literacy. What are your thoughts on the same question, the fact that most Bajans cannot or do not or have not invested in the stock exchange, stock market?
Firstly, I just want to say that I really agreed with a lot of what David just mentioned. I was here nodding in my head as he spoke. But what I will say as well, to agree, we have a lot of persons that are risk averse, to be honest with you. And with the people that I come across and that I have conversations with, the question is always, we don't know where to invest, right? That is what that is the notion that comes to people. You know, we don't know where to put our money. We are told about investing, but what are the options? A lot of people don't know the options, right? We know that there are certain companies in Barbados that will advertise that they do investing, but most people, because they don't know about it, we understand that investing is another educational curve, that a learning curve that people will have to understand, because you don't want a situation where you invest in something that you do not understand how it works, right? And I believe that a gap exists there in regards to really and truly educating the public about what investing is, what are the different tools, are the different mediums that you can place your money in for it to actually grow. Because as David would have mentioned, really and truly, you can't save yourself to wealth, right? You can't save yourself to wealth. The thing is with the stock exchange, though, I believe that it's still underdeveloped in Barbados. You know, when we look at what is available outside of our shores, I believe it's still a bit underdeveloped. So persons might more put the money into like things like mutual funds, you know, etc. But again, it goes back to the root issue, which is understanding what investing is, understanding what different vehicles you can put your money in, and so that we can actually shift the mindset a bit in Barbados, and persons don't get to the point where they believe that leaving money on a bank account is going to help them to, increase their wealth. And we understand that inflation, right? We understand inflation is higher than the interest that they're being offered on their account, which means that literally your money is unemployed. And if you're going to be saving for a particular reason, you save with a purpose, right? You save, people will tell you recommended 3 to 6 living expenses, right? 3 to 6 months living expenses. You will save for a particular purpose, but once you meet your savings goals, the next step for you is to invest. But the question again is, where do I invest my money, right? We can't look at bonds right now, right? We know what happened with the last bond that was raised. So persons might not necessarily look at bonds at this time, So we have bonds, we have real estate, we have stocks, right? We have mutual funds. There are other things you can put your money in. But I believe that if we sensitize the public or we educate people and let them know, hey, these are other options that you can put or channel your money through, I believe that it will, cause some mindset shifts to happen, and person would be more open to doing so. It's just about educating the public about investing a bit more.
Quick question to Adrian before I go on to Mr. Armstrong. Adrian, you spoke earlier about the fact that, the pandemic opened a lot of doors for banking and for persons to do things online. But then we also heard that Barbadians are risk averse. Do you think that there are many people who still shy away from this digital transformation in the banking sector and prefer to come in and do their banking face to face? And if so, what are banks doing to really address that issue?
Yeah, there are many people still shying away from it, but honestly, if you YouTube, again, you can just go online and log on to the bank's website. There's so much, Instagram, for example, there's so much out there. I mean, the same way we go and we chat with our friends, just spend a few minutes, go on YouTube and look at the smart ABMs that the banks have. I mean, your cash and your check goes on the same time. So it's just a matter for persons to, again, educate themselves, explore the channels. It's all there. It pains me to walk by a supermarket or anywhere and see a line for someone to pay a bill. I'm not calling any names, but that could be done. You press of a button. I mean, you can do that as we chat. I can transfer funds to England, London, wherever. I mean, it's there. Take advantage of it. It amazes me. But
what percentage would you say of the population are those persons who are still very risk averse and still want to come and do face to face and might not trust the online banking?
I don't want to quantify it, but it's high. I mean, it's high because on a daily basis to have to tell a person over the line, over the telephone, I'm sorry, we don't do this in the bank anymore. And then you're getting attitude. You might get, the bank's the worst. You might get, I don't know, this complaint, whatever. It's amazing. But again, it's all there. I also want to say that we also educate persons. If you have an issue, just come in and talk with us. We can show you how it's done. Quite easy. I mean, it's there. Take advantage of it, please.
Do banks do outreach programs like clinics, going out into the communities, teaching persons, that kind of thing?
Yes, they do. Quite recently, we had a few digital specialists go to libraries and old persons and people, for example. Those were that was the target market, to try to educate them and show them what's going on with the digital banking, the digital system. But it wasn't just for old people; it was for everyone. I mean, everyone. You can just ask a question. You could have gone in, and we do it on a continuous basis. Feel free to come, knock on our door. We will show you. We will explain it to you. But do you want it? How willing are we to embrace it? Again, it's there. Please take advantage of it.
We have a comment from one of the persons watching the show, and they said that tech is particularly an issue for seniors. Is there any special, program for seniors to be able to use the online banking? My grandmother is going to be 90 this year, and I couldn't believe it when she started using WhatsApp. So in my opinion, if a very old person could use WhatsApp and could be taught to use WhatsApp, what about these online apps, and particularly for older persons who might feel very helpless when it comes to all this app and this online, and anything being done particularly for them?
Yes, I mean, granted, we do offer our digital specialists do offer that training and guidance, etc. But I don't want to just say the banks, because I would expect that the younger person in the whole household as well would encourage the other person, hold their hand, talk with them, guide them, whatever the case may be. Don't just say the banks and this and that. Don't even need you. We need David. We need everyone to come on board and assist, because yes, they're the older folks who might be a bit afraid of trying stuff, but at the same time, we can reassure them by just guiding them. Yes, the banks will do what it has to do to ensure that they're not left behind, but we need everyone, especially those living in the household, to assist with educating the old ones as well and guiding them to use the various digital platforms.
We heard recently in Barbados that, across the Caribbean, there's going to be a new digital bank. How much shaking are the traditional banks in Barbados doing in their boots? I'm going to ask you that, Adrian, and then roll on to. I'm going to roll on to the whole group. I'll then go on to Ray Jackman. How much shaking in your boots are the traditional banks doing at the news of this new digital bank?
Well, where I am, I think we are the pioneers. I think persons are no playing catch up. That's just me saying, please. But at the same time, we're there. We started already. I mean, it's for persons to try to get on board, try to, come to the front. But where I am, I don't think we are shaking at all. It's just a case of us doing what we had to do, and others are now playing catch up, in my opinion.
What about you, Mr. Ray Blackman?
Well, okay, so digital bank. Blackman, that's right. Yeah, digital bank. Well, in terms of shaking the boots, digital is the word, and to the extent that that bank is the first in the Caribbean to come with fully digital bank, is going to be a plus for it. But the big challenge that bank will have, which is the issue of trust. Now we're talking about the question of educating the older folk and so on. One of the big challenges in Caribbean is the question of trust as well as literacy. A lot of the folk, especially in small MSM and so on, they just do not have that level of trust. And that's the first thing to come. And the fact of the matter is that the extent of the unbanked in the Caribbean is very huge. You take Ghana, maybe a year or two ago, it was reckoned that maybe 8% of the population are unbanked. That it's a hugely cash society. They're not using banks at all in that regard, or not using the financial institutions the way you would expect. In Barbados, maybe it's less of that. In places like Jamaica and some of those other places, there's a huge unbanked population. And what we're finding is that, yes, the banks, as they're saying, maybe having banking and some of those features, but they are not, the banks have not allowed fintech players and so on, to the extent that they are, that have the kind of technology to be able to integrate into their back office and so on, and make services available for the unbanked. The banks, I find, are in the Caribbean, as opposed to other regions like across Africa and so on, where banks welcome fintech. They are happy to integrate with them and so on, and be able to bring the into the financial sector and have them financially included. The banks in the Caribbean have been very reluctant. It's like they're in control of this thing and they're very tight. Unfortunately, the Caribbean just seems to get the worst of it. The worst in terms of the strong, stifling regulatory framework and how they interpret these customer service requirements in EKYC. And then they also have this situation where it seems like they believe that they're the ones who make sure they keep everything for themselves or whatever. And they're very reluctant to do these things. So it's not just a question of, it's a question of, yes, literacy and teaching the. You just remember there's a trust issue. They don't believe, people out of MSMEs don't believe that the banks are there for them. And if it's going to take a month and 2 months to open up and you ask 1,000,001 questions, they're not interested. they come to do their business and be part of that cash society. And that's where I think we have a big challenge for entrepreneurs and so on. And that's where I think there's a lot of failing. Maybe the digital bank, if it addresses the question of onboarding of especially these unbanked, it will go a long way. Not just in terms of the who already are in banking and who are already financially included, but it will go a long way towards bringing in those who are not financially included, all the unbanked and the underbanked, and which the current banks are not doing much about. They're not much about at all, and maybe there's a ecosystem to be there. Maybe there's also need for innovative technology. We begin to see some of that innovative technology. There's one company I could mention that I have some association with called Pay Anywhere, and they have the kind of technology that is interoperable, that can integrate with the banking back offices and so on to bring a lot more of these excluded persons from the financial sector into the financial sector in a way that grows economies. And all over the world, there is this drive. It's very much part of the Millennium Goals to have more people financially included, because then you're able to reach them, you're able to provide service to them, you're able to grow your economies and that kind of. And unfortunately, I must say that in the Caribbean, the commercial banks and in Barbados are really helping that process, because they are resistant to change, and maybe a digital bank will come in there, and the existing banks are not prepared to reach out. They see almost like this MSMEs and the small man is maybe a nuisance. You don't even want me to come in the bank anymore in a sense. So we're going to penalize you for why, you know? But that's a whole, that's a, in terms of the Caribbean, 7 million people or more, huge percentage of our people are in that category. And a lot of them operate small, and they just have to continue.
I'm going to ask Mr. Simpson, do you think they are shaking in their boots?
Hello, everybody. We are here live at Jacqueline's Variety. Once again, let's talk entrepreneurship. Once again, the place is rampant. I'm here with the entire BTFL team. Say hello, everybody. Hi. We're here having some Santi Spot Point. We're also here with Jason Nurse, the owner of Jacqueline's Variety. I hope you guys are having just as much fun as I am having here. So hi to you guys over there. So let's just do a little area shot of us. We're out here, we're playing some pool. Jazan is playing pool. Say hey. Once again, we are at Jacqueline's Variety Live, having more fun. I know you guys watch us.
Thank you so much, Anderson, there at our watch.
Jason Nurse as well. Jason, how would you rate banking in Barbados on a scale to 1 to 10 for a small business?
I will get an 8.
8. Yeah, 8 thing. You've had good experience? All right. Jacqueline's Variety. Let's talk entrepreneurship. Also, next time.
Thank you so much, Anderson. There are our watch party. I was going to David Simpson. David, how much shaking do you think the incumbent banks are doing? And please, Adrian, please don't give me that facial expression. I just asking a question. David, how much shaking in the boots do you think the incumbent banks are doing with the news about this new digital bank?
I don't think they're doing any shaking at all. You know, I compared this similar to wireless flow operating before the Digicels and the others came in. I mean, the commercial banks, the existing ones, have the infrastructure in place, have their customers. They've been serving the country for years. They have their backing from, in our case now, Canada and Trinidad primarily. I think with the new digital bank, I am taking a wait and see approach to see exactly what digital banking means for Sagicor. And my understanding is that initially will be in Barbados only, because there is a Sagicor bank already in Jamaica, because they had Sagicor had bought over the RBTT assets in Jamaica some time back. However, I am not crystal clear as to what digital banking in Barbados means in terms of what Sagicor is planning. Is it the entire process of banking that is digitized? Are they pushing more of the actual, what I call the day-to-day consumer banking, deposits and withdrawals and transfers and so on, rather than having a very small branch footprint similar to what obtains in the UK? Or is it, as Ray was mentioning, the onboarding process and all transactions and so on will be fully digitized? Now, having said all of that, Sagicor and a digital bank sounds like a brilliant idea, but we have to go back to the cultural issue we still face, and I think this is where a lot of the incumbent banks will still do well. I think Ray mentioned this whole issue of trust, and it's a combination of trust and fear. When it comes to technology, and I noticed this from early in my work life, the average person does not trust technology, especially when it comes to banks and it comes to their money. And it has not been, from my observation in the past, only a senior thing. There have been young, middle-aged, and other people who have a fear of machines and anything that is not human when it comes to their hard-earned money. That's just a reality. And then fear and trust also comes in terms of worrying about what happens to their money, and this is as a result of, in the past, the trade confirmers, more recently Clico, and financial institutions falling into difficulty and persons either losing or being worried about their money. So I think digital is the way to go, is the way of the future, and I think somebody mentioned fintech and how it is embraced in Africa and so on, and I fully support those comments. But we have to see how the concept of the digital bank meshes with Barbadian culture, and how people respond to what ultimately could potentially solve some of the ills that people have in their minds with the incumbent banks. But I think it's too early to say it is a saving grace, so to speak, but it is a step in the right direction, and we have to wait and see how it is rolled out and exactly what digital banking means for Sagicor once they get it up and running.
Thank you so much, Marcia. I would love to get your take, but I am being told that we are coming to the end of the show, and we have to feature a BTFL entrepreneur, Nicholas Hurley from Salt Life Media.
Welcome to Salt Life Media, the one-stop shop for all your photography, videography, and post-production services. Now let's have a look at some science. What about that education? Oh, we love a bit of education. Collaborations with artists bringing art to life. Coaching and mentorship. Do you have an active lifestyle? Salt Life Media. Salt is in everything.
And that was Nicholas Hurley. Nicholas is the creative director of Salt Life Media, an entity committed to providing quality, educational, intuitive, artistic, visual imagery. Their visuals are creatively expressed through photography, videography, and post-production services. Salt Life differentiates itself from others through their active lifestyle. Their content has provided many creative business opportunities, educational programs, and jobs for local entrepreneurs looking to promote their brand, businesses, and reach potential investors. Through various collaborations, they have partnered with many individuals in an effort to further develop and grow the company. They're currently exploring the use of integrating blockchain technology in their upcoming projects in an effort to verify their intellectual property. They will also be providing the service for all future collaborative projects with local and international digital creative entrepreneurs. I see that we have about 1 more minute left, and I am going to ask Marcia to do us the honors like any good woman would and just answer that question in exactly 1 minute. What do you think about the digital transformation of banking in Barbados and whether or not it would benefit persons?
I believe that it is a benefit. You know, we are moving in a direction whereas that everything is being digitized right now. You know, technology is changing, it continuously evolves. So we have to move with the times, right? We can't operate using manual methods or archaic methods. So it is for us to be able to open our minds and actually, you know, adapt to where the world is actually taking us at this present time.
Thank you so much. And on behalf of my co-hosts, Agneton and Stephanie, we would like to thank all of our panelists for joining us on Let's Talk Entrepreneurship. This is our 3rd episode, and from the comments, I'm seeing that there is a lot of engagement and there's definitely a lot of interest. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much to our producers. Thank you so much to the BTFL for having us. God bless you and good night.
Good night.